It's time for a new evolution in raising golfers, one that doesn't involve headaches, tears, or heading down the path of unknown. Whether you're trying to introduce children to the game of golf, help them play competitively, or play at a collegiate level, you're in the right place. This show is for any parent, player, or coach who wants to build a better team at home and on the golf course. This is the Raising Golfers Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Raising Golfers Podcast. I am your host, Travis Hauser, PGA Professional here in Carlsbad, California. I've got a question for you for this wonderful episode coming up. Does your junior golfer have the ambition to play competitive golf after high school or college golf? I know I sure did, and at the same time, I had no idea what that journey looked like before getting into it. So today, our guest is a great friend of mine, and we also worked and coached golf together in Shanghai, China. PGA Professional Joe Hoblyn. Joe is a PGA Professional from the UK, and he spent 6 years coaching golf in China. And once the pandemic began, he decided to take a step away from his coaching career to focus fully on his own game and play competitive golf. And today, he's going to share what that journey looked like and what he has learned over the past 2 years. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm so excited to have Joe Hoblyn here on the Raising Golfers Podcast. Joe, welcome to the show.
Thanks, mate. Glad to be on.
Absolutely. Now, for those of you listening, Joe and I used to work together in Shanghai, China for a number of years together. And after we both left China, we both went two different directions. I went back to the United States. Joe actually went on another adventure, which I think we're going to talk about today. And it's going to be very important for those of you who might be interested in either helping your junior golfer play in tournaments long term, or if you are a junior golfer listening and you like to play in golf, whether it's beyond high school or college and play at a competitive level, this will be a very good listen for you. So, Joe, why don't you share a little bit of the journey once you stepped away from your profession, working and coaching in Shanghai, China, into what you decided to do?
Yeah, sure, mate. So, and the interesting thing now is, I've come back to coaching again. So it was a bit of a jump in, then jump out and jump back in again to coaching. But essentially what I did leaving the job in Shanghai was go back home and focus more on competitive golf, which is something I'd never done. So a bit of background of how I became to coach in the first place was I was into golf quite a bit, from when I was about 16. Got down to a 4 handicap and went on this degree in the University of Birmingham, UK, called Golf Management Studies. And that was designed for good golfers who were never really interested in playing, let's say, but more about like the business of golf, and maybe they'd later go into be golf managers, or golf equipment guys, a bunch of things within the golf industry. And then I fell into coaching off the back of that, but never as a kid or in my early days of the golf profession was thinking, let's go and play and really earn money through that route. So I did that degree. I did 6 years in China, so 3 years Shenzhen, 3 years Shanghai with you, and decided I'd give it a whirl at playing. After all that time away, it almost came back to almost like I was when I was 15, 16 again, wanting to get as good as I could at golf.
That's cool. And then, so as your term was coming close to an end in Shanghai with coaching at the golf academy that we were at, where were you thinking about going to start dabbling into practice and playing to transition into full-time tournament play and full-time competitive practice?
Sure. So I actually started with a pretty short-term plan, like trip to Thailand over Chinese New Year, which is just before I left this company. And that the idea of that was like just have a 2-week smash of golf. Basically, I was in this cheap Airbnb right next to Laguna, Phuket, which is a really nice golf course in Thailand there, and just like smash the practice every day. Met some cool people out there, some other players, got into a bit of community, and was playing a lot of golf, basically. I really just loved every minute of that. So that was almost like dipping the toe in the water, if you like, to see if I enjoyed that intensity. And it was then about 2 or 3 months later after that, which I was back in the UK to do it, let's say, more full time.
And so then, like, how long into that trip then? Because I know you were supposed to only be there for 2 weeks, but I think you ended up being there for a little bit longer. But how long into that did you actually realize, like, actually, this is pretty cool. I'm enjoying the practice, the time I have to actually put into the game. How long was it until you actually started seeing maybe some change in results, whether it was on the golf course or just how you were striking the ball or hitting different types of shots in your practice?
Yeah, I think more so than that. I mean, I've been working pretty solidly for you know 6 years basically on coaching, for golf academies, and it was like 6 day a week kind of stuff, into that rhythm. So even like obviously week 1 or 2, it was such a different environment there where I was waking up and my time was basically okay. It's all almost selfish time, It's like, oh, okay, how am I going to get better today?
Hmm.
So almost, yeah, I enjoyed it right from the beginning, really. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure if I really got that much better actually on that whole trip. I was there for eventually 6 weeks because the COVID pandemic, extended that trip from 2 to 6 weeks. But
Hmm.
yeah, looking back, I don't know if I improved much there, but it was just fun to get out and play.
Did you have any short-term goals while you were there?
Uh, no, not really. It was just like I was just committed to putting the time in, really waking up, getting a routine going, doing some gym, eating well, going to practice and play, and just enjoy like the grind. I guess is the cliche phrase there, which I was aiming for.
Yeah, I think that's quite important though, because similar what you said there is similar how I like to coach golf, which is kind of like is developing lifelong experiences through golf. And I think maybe starting this journey, you started the right way, where it's like, look, I just want to go out and have some fun. Now I'm going to put in the time, I'm going to put in the practice, I'm going to work hard, but I'm going to make sure I'm enjoying it while I'm doing it. Because I think if maybe you had a different mindset where it was like, okay, I need these results, I need to be shooting these scores, I need to be hitting shots this way, I need to be able to compete in this way, you might have never gone down that year and a half, 2 year journey that you went on, because the environment that you had set for yourself wasn't so positive, the experience that you had wasn't so positive. So I think starting out that way, I think, is great for listeners to hear, because I think that should be a starting mentality. I think that's a great way to transition into taking it more seriously. And just like what I say with junior golfers is, I want the experience to be positive, start positive, stay positive, and then at some point, if they say, hey, I want to take this to the next level, I want to play in tournaments, mom or dad, or I want to play high school golf or college golf, okay, then we can help them along the way. And I think for you, it was a very similar starting transition point into then moving back to the UK's, from what it sounds like.
Sure. And at that stage, it was all so new to me. It was all fun. But yeah, don't get me wrong, mate. It's as you do that, let's say grind, practice, daily strive to get better. I mean, every day is not fun by any means. In the
Right.
sense of how you're fun when you're hanging out with your mates, having a good time. That's fun. I mean, a lot of days. I mean, let's say probably most days it's not fun in that sense of the word. That you're enjoying it, because a lot of the time it just feels horrible because you can do better. Um, the improvement is almost like the stock market, where you're hoping over time the trend will be moving upwards, but for sure day to day it is absolutely a roller coaster ride. And I mean, for me at least, I was, let's say, putting a lot of time and seriously on my golf for 2 years. Like, it felt there was, on the whole, probably more down days and up days. But
Well,
I did
I can
say
understand.
from start to finish, I certainly had some improvements in the ball striking, and felt like I definitely feel like a more accomplished player now than I was, leaving China.
And now let's hear a message from our show sponsor. Hey guys, this last spring I teamed up with Operation 36 here at our facility in Carlsbad, California, and it has completely changed my way of coaching and service to my customers. Operation 36 is a developmental golf program designed to take beginners from playing their first round to being able to shoot par or better for 9 holes. So here's how it works. Participants attend weekly 1 hour classes and work through a 6 level curriculum. They then play in 9 hole events once or twice a month with a common goal to shoot 36 or better from different distances. And using the Operation 36 app, coaches can plan programs, communicate with families, and track students' progress. It's really, really cool. If you're a parent listening, search for a program near you on their website at operation36.golf/juniors. And coaches, if you'd like to start a program at your facility, go to the same website, operation36.golf/coaches. Okay, so yeah, I mean, it's fascinating. I mean, you're giving us real feel and information, and I mean, I remember talking to you along the way because we had a lot of conversations over the phone about the process
Yeah.
that you were going through, and once you got back to the UK, what was the goal that you were after, or an end result that you were trying to achieve?
So just coming back, um, the goal essentially was simply just put everything I could into it and just become the best player I could be. That was, I think, as much as it went in terms of goals. Of course, the back of my mind that you have visions of like, oh, okay, where could this go? Could it get to, what level could it get to if it's like a European Tour, Challenge Tour? Um, you know, it's not like I had a particular goal to get anywhere in particular. It was just like, let's get really sick at golf, and
That's great.
in a year or two's time, or however long it takes, you'll by following that desire that you've almost set out to begin with, you're going to make more informed decisions later in terms of what's the next step is, And I think that was all I had really in terms of goal.
So, did you have the burning desire the entire length of the journey?
I would say the short answer would probably be no, but would have been a certain yes. In the beginning, let's say when it was fresh and new, and I was really like on this idea of okay, let's get better, and it was such a change from what I've been doing the last 6 years. I was really into it, and it was easy to get up and just push through because I was getting better quicker in the beginning, and I
Mm.
saw some quick improvements. Let's say the first 3-4 months working with a good coach out in Maryland, I think he is Ryan Cheney. So he helped me a bunch. Good coach there.
So then, obviously, then it sounds like you hit some type of plateau or you were rising quickly, but then obviously there was it doesn't continue in anything in life, right? Where you're just going to keep going up. So then,
Sure.
once that transition happened, did you feel like you lost some of the desire to get out and work so hard and practice?
It's an interesting one. I mean, ultimately, I guess I finished up now after 2 years of it, and I've started another job coaching again. So right now I'm abroad in the UAE at a brand new golf club in a place called Al Ruwais here. So obviously, ultimately, I decided, I wasn't committed to it enough to stick it out. So obviously, the answer is at some point I realized, oh, okay, I'm not committed to doing this every day.
Mm.
And maybe yeah, for me, it was going a bit off tangent again here, but I think an important part of playing this, especially at like the age I'm at now, so I'm 29. If I was going to go out and do it again, and I'm not saying it won't happen in the future, but I'd want to do it off my own back. So huge, shout out to my parents; they were really supportive through the whole time.
Mm.
I think maybe what got to me in the end is that I think I didn't see it as sustainable after all this time practicing, and I wasn't earning any money from playing really at all. You're putting in so much time, a lot of money into it. You start to ask the questions of, what's it going to look like in 5, 10 years, and I
Mm.
guess your brain's always questioning itself, isn't it? So I eventually just decided like an opportunity's come out here, and I've just gone for that.
So, what kinds of struggles then did you start to realize throughout the 2-year journey that you didn't maybe foresee at the beginning?
Okay, yeah. So I think in terms of the struggles along the way, maybe one thing you don't quite realize before you get into it full time with intensity for many months is how you could feel like you're not improving for a long time, um, and it's firing through that, still getting up and turning up to practice, even though you're not feeling like you're getting better all the time. That is
Mm.
probably was much harder and much more on the mind than I thought it might be. I guess we all have this idea, this like fairy tale idea that the path to improving is going to be quite linear, and the more time you put in, the better you're going to get. But 100%
Hmm.
more time does not equal improvement. It's so many more factors in the mix than just the time you're putting in.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Time is 100% like required, that's for sure. But there's more to it than that. And definitely every day
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I was improving all the time. It's probably something I didn't quite take. appreciate, let's say, starting out, let's say.
Right. And it's I mean, I know you, and I know going into it you would realize, especially being a, a coach as well, that like it's not linear, but then like when we kind of get in like really involved in it and you kind of dabble into it and you start seeing the
Yeah,
progression, like even though you know it's not linear, like deep down somewhere all of a sudden like it starts to seem like it is linear or it should be linear, right? And
sure.
then all of a sudden you start hitting those hiccups in the journey and that, you know, struggles that you're going to have to work through in your own game, right? And like you said, I think the way you described it was perfect there about like time is necessary, but time is not the only factor that makes the progression happen. So,
100%.
you know, looking back on this journey that you went on for 2 years, you know, dedicating your practice, you you even seeked out professional help from other coaches, and I think that's
Sure.
really cool because you're a coach yourself. What did you learn about the whole journey from the 2 years experience that you learned about yourself, and then maybe how that also can then help you into your real profession of coaching golf?
Sure. So, yeah, on the coaching part there, getting help. I mean, I kind of always, well, I wouldn't say always. Maybe I kind of thought, okay, at some point I'm going to have some help here, and maybe there was at some point on that journey, like um, I've transitioned from thinking, oh, I'm a coach, I know the swing, I can figure it out myself, but almost doing that. Then, if, I think it was probably about 3 months of kind of trying to coach myself. Um, After which point I was like, oh man, like, being the golfer and the coach is it's just not, it just didn't work for me. I mean, it might work for some people, but dealing, you can look at your swing, say, objectively as a coach, but there's a whole different ball game going on inside your head with like feel and real and all of this. So what I liked
Mm.
about getting the help there was, that someone else basically obviously doing that. You're outsourcing that part of it, so you're just following someone else's what they say, and there's definitely a lot of value in that for me. Because yeah, I think I wouldn't have made such great improvements had I not had the help there. For sure.
That's great. Yeah, that's great. I'm sure you learned things as well that's going to help with your coaching too. And
Yes. Yeah.
you know,
Sure.
did I know you got a lot of like technical help because you're doing a lot of online coaching because it was all remote coaching. Did the coaching that you got as well help with any of the tactics or help you with any of your tournament play or how you approach things when you went out and played in professional tournaments?
Let's see. I would say not directly. I don't think any of the coaching I had was necessarily about like how to handle tournaments. But I'd say just by playing more tournaments myself, um, you kind of get into a bit of a rhythm of how to prepare for them, and also, you get less anxious the more tournaments you play, because you've just used to that environment. Like the first few I played, I was much more, let's say, anxious about and had way more adrenaline compared to ones I played later down the line. There's always going to be some adrenaline in there, obviously, but yeah, the more you play, the less anxious you get.
Or at least you
So
learn how to play through those nerves, right? Or
yeah,
how to
sure,
handle those nerves, right?
and I think it's an interesting one. So I was going to say, yeah, it's almost the way you frame it. I think is more important. So obviously, nerves. There's a lot of different words for that feeling of that adrenaline, right, and that anxiousness, which
Mhm.
everyone is going to have. I
Mhm.
think you guys are playing a lot. You know, they're just going to call their nerves, excitement. That they're going to positively frame those feelings in a way that they can take to be a good thing on the first tee. Like, oh, right, I've got all this adrenaline. I'm excited. I'm going to use that and smash a ball down the middle of the fairway. But maybe when you're new to it, you're seeing it as, oh, I'm really nervous. I'm going to mess it up. So I think how you frame it is mega important.
That's good
Um,
advice.
and another thing I think I learned, and my brother actually, shout out to Ben Hoblyn. I had a good conversation with him once or twice because he caddied for me in a couple of events, and he kind of helped with kind of the big picture of like just a tournament on one day, right? For the golfer at that time, it's a mega huge deal. But I remember the conversation with Ben, and it was really helpful because he was like, "Man, look, worst case scenario, you have a huge score, and then you come last." And I was like, "Yeah," and he's like, "And then what?" And then he's like, "Oh well, you go home and you wake up, and everyone's forgotten in a day or two's time, right?" And
Right.
if
Right.
you look at it like that, almost on the way to a tournament, that's quite an empowering feeling because you're like, look, you're invincible. If you're accepting the fact that worst case scenario, I come last, and you're a big boy, you can handle that, then you literally can't lose. Really, you're out there just trying to better yourself from that worst case scenario, right?
That's
Which you've
great.
already
Yeah, I
accepted is
like
going to
that.
be okay, and if you can only better from there, then it's a bonus. So that was quite a good one. I take that now to any kind of time. I'm not even in golf tournaments, but say you're doing something new, like I don't know, public speaking or anything you're a bit anxious about, or it's a new skill. Just go with that mindset. Look, worst case scenario, I mess it up, people laugh, and but the reality is no one really cares, and you just move on.
100%. Yeah. I actually had one of my adult students tell me this recently because we talked a lot
Great.
about mindset. And he said basically, he's like, my average score is for him, his average score is 85, right? Let's just say, right? He says, if I come out and I shoot a 95 in one day, he's like, the guys I'm playing with, they're not going to care that I shot 95. And in fact, by the next day, they're going to forget about it. So he's like, so why do I need to be so nervous to not shoot a 95 when actually that's probably going to make me shoot a 95? It frees me up if I don't actually have that mentality and not worry about what other people are thinking about my game and just focus on one shot at a time. And he's like, since he's
100%.
changed his mindset in that manner, it's really helped him actually drop his handicap by 5 strokes.
Wow.
And, by having a completely different mindset of just how to take and handle course play and tournament play and those kinds of things. And it's very similar, like what you said there. It's almost like not changing the expectations, but changing the internal pressure you put on yourself going into something when,
Sure.
like, at the end of the day, some of these things actually don't really matter, or they don't actually weigh as heavily as we think they should. And it takes a lot of pressure off us. And I think it frees up a lot of golfers out on the golf course.
100%. Yeah, yeah. And
So that's great advice.
I think you can take that, on a quite specific example, like when you're playing golf, let's say of a particular shot, maybe suddenly you're quite anxious about it. Maybe there's water there, or, I don't know, there's a chip shot you don't quite fancy. Um, if you have kind of suddenly a flash of, you could mess it up, I wouldn't say try and put that to the back of your mind. I would say embrace that, have a quick 2 second almost playthrough of how that would look. Like, oh, what's the worst
Hmm.
case scenario? Okay, well, I dump it in the water. Then what? Oh, you lose a penalty shot. And that's never going to go away. That will always be there as a worst case scenario. I
Hmm.
think addressing that as a potential option will help you to kind of be more, let's say, create a plan right there in the moment to not do that. And if you address that as the option, you say like, okay, well, how do I not dump it in the water? Well, let's make a committed swing on it. So I wouldn't say you should try and just delete it completely. Just address it, and then in your pre-shot routine, there you're kind of creating a plan. Uh,
Yeah, I know what you're
you, know,
saying
you know
there
you
is
know what I'm saying?
basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, because no, I've talked to some other mental golf coaches, and what they talked about is acceptance, and basically
Exactly. Yeah,
almost like
that's it.
accepting your fate of whether it's coming in dead last in a tournament or accepting the fact that you've just hit a shot into the water. And the
Mm.
people who are better at having that higher level of acceptance, meaning like, okay, I've hit in the water, I can still chip it, and I can still make an up and down from the water and still make a par. Or you could
Sure.
have the other side where you're not going to accept that. You've hit in the water, you put your head down, you're upset, you carry that mentality to the next shot or for the rest of the hole. You make a triple bogey. Now you carry that over to the next hole and you follow up with another triple bogey because you're still in the mindset of
Sure.
having this low level of acceptance based on a poor result or poor outcome. And in golf, nobody hits every shot perfect. So I think what you
Yeah.
said there is exactly in line with that.
Yeah, 100%. And that what you said there as well is bang on, isn't it? No one hits every shot perfect, so you've got to go out there knowing you're there for 4 hours, and most of the shots are just going to be okay. You're going to have like I don't know 2 or 3 stinkers. You're going to have 2 or 3 amazing shots, and everything else is going to be somewhere in between. So the quicker you can say you hit a bad chip or dump one in the water, and just quickly go, oh, okay, well that's one of the 2 or 3 bad swings of the day or shots of the day, and move it on, right? It's all in the expected quota, let's say, isn't it?
For sure. I mean, I just did an episode a couple episodes back, and the title was "Perfect is the Enemy of Good." And
Mm,
the idea of that is that if we get caught up on just perfection only, then we actually lose sight of what good is. And actually, if you're good at golf, you're actually miles ahead of everybody else, right? But if you chase perfection, then you start to beat yourself up. Then you'll have a lower level of acceptance, and then it just spirals down in the wrong direction. So
100%.
we shouldn't be chasing perfection, right? We should be accepting the fact that, you know what, we're not going to hit every shot perfect, and we need to move on from that. So, Joe, you spent 2 years working on your golf game, focusing on yourself and tournament play. I thought it was fun following the journey along with you and talking to you about the things you learned in your lessons that you did, things that you were going through with the tournament play. I mean, I felt generally like it was a great experience for you from the outsider looking in, and the things that you had told me. Would you say that that journey has helped you to now share those lessons that you've learned with your students as a coach?
Yes, 100%. I mean, a lot of the ideas we've just discussed there really about, framing like your mind in terms of getting ready for a tournament and, the long-term struggles of the game would probably be the main takeaways from doing that, I would say. Um, and, another thing too, really, with if you're striving for, let's say high level golf or anything and any endeavor you choose, it's not always so important about like the day to day, exactly what you're doing. Like we said before, time is an absolute prerequisite for improving at anything. And it's the people who can get everything in order so that they are sticking with that skills, let's say golf, for many, many years, turning up every day to practice and train, no matter what, are the people who are going to make it. It's not necessarily because they did this drill today or they practiced for 8 hours today. It's this consistency over time, which is the key. So obviously a lot of factors that go into that. Financial is a big one for golf. There's a lot of outlay there in terms of travel, competition costs, lessons, gear. Golf's probably quite high in terms of financial burden. And a huge thing too is the desire. Like you've got to in there somewhere the guys who are going to make it to the highest level. They've got a burning desire in there just to keep turning up. Like thick and thin. The weather's bad, the weather's good, or they're playing bad. They're going to just keep at it for many, many, many years. Which who knows where that comes from? You motivated as kids. There's so many factors there, but I'd say that's really the main driver, which is going to make the difference, rather than the day-to-day stuff of let's say what swing you're working on. You know what I mean? Like there's kind of macro
Absolutely.
and micro, right?
For sure. Yeah. I think that you summed everything up there really well. And, the first time I heard about the burning desire was from Dave Malone. He's been on the podcast a few times. I reference him because I think this is a very important thing. And the burning desire sums up a lot for us as adults when we're talking about junior golfers or even just ourselves is how high is that level of burning desire? Because that is what's going to ultimately drive somebody to go out and, chase after their goals and their dreams of, let's just say, high level golf, if that's what we're talking about. And what you also summed up there was, it's more of a process than necessarily immediate outcomes. And the people who are working towards the process are generally the ones who are going to excel the furthest in life. And they're
Mm-hmm.
going to accept those day to day highs and lows that you're going to have, even shot to shot, right? And it's like if we were given a golf lesson, sometimes I talk to students and say, okay, just be aware of the movement that you are making, the new movement pattern that you're making. Let's try to take the outcome and the result out of our focus point right now while we're hitting golf shots. Because
Sure,
number one, you will hit some bad shots while we're going through this. But if you can continue to be aware of what you're doing and reward yourself for when you feel like you've made the change in the movement pattern to where we want it to be, you got to reward yourself for that. And then you will then long term be able to see and relate back that, okay, now we see the outcome, we see the results, as opposed to putting the results at the forefront and focusing on just the outcome, the results immediately. And I think that goes back to like what you were saying is like day to day is like, okay, if I'm only focused on is today good or is today bad, and that's all you think about, it's not going to help you long term and spring forward for the journey, right? And you're
sure,
saying is the process is what we're after, right? It's a process, and embracing the fact that there's going to be highs and lows and understanding that's part of the process is huge.
sure. Yeah, couldn't agree more. And like, yeah, on that too. Let's say I started the training, say, in April of 2020 or March, April of 2020, and I just enjoyed that. Like I grinded it out, no real expectations of anything, and then suddenly I've come along, and it was at the end of September or October of that year, so let's say 6 months, and I've won a local golf tournament with PGA Pros, and I shot 6 under in one round and won the thing by like 3 or 4 shots, and I've never done any round like that. It just came out of nowhere, and it was something like
That's
that. And
cool.
suddenly I was like, oh wow, like that is, in terms of a result, obviously way better than I've ever done. It's not like I was aiming for it, but it suddenly just came along one day. Obviously, as a result of the practice and playing a lot. So yeah, something like that, you can look back and say, actually, yeah, 6 months, that's like a milestone there, and it's shown some real gains, even though day to day you're not looking out for it. And yeah, I
For
think
sure.
over, as you're playing more and practicing more, you're probably going to have those days when you've suddenly surprised yourself with something like that. And it's those things you can really enjoy and use almost as your ammunition to say, oh no, I am getting better here. It's trending upwards. And that certainly helps get through the day to day, especially when it's not going so well.
Absolutely. Well, my last question then for you, Joe,
Okay.
is if we strip it back to, let's say there's a junior golfer who wants to go down this journey. And I would say it's probably more realistic for this junior golfer to be of age, maybe a little bit older in their teens.
Mm-hmm.
Who would you recommend go down this journey? And then the second question would be, as adults, whether we're coaches or parents, what would be the best support we could offer for them?
Okay, well, let's do the second one first. So, in terms of support, I mean, I think that is the one word which sums it up really. It's, support the athlete, support your kids, whoever it is, as much as you can. Don't put your own agendas onto them. If you've got an idea of where you want to be, or maybe you want them to relive something you never did, that's not the way to go about it. It's supporting where you think it's going to help them out. They've got to be the ones coming with the desire, if you like, and the parents and the coach's job is just to nurture that over time. I guess for kids, we're offering financial support to them, giving them lifts if they can't drive. All this kind of stuff is obviously important. I'd say say if they've got a goal, the time we should get annoyed maybe as parents or coaches is when we know they're not giving it their all. Like we want to be praising effort for sure. And I guess
Great advice.
parents. I don't have a kid, so but I guess parents they'll kind of get to know their kid and know maybe when they're slacking off a bit, and maybe it just needs a gentle reminder, like, hang on, look, mate, come on, what you're doing, you've made this goal to get really good at this. Why are you not giving it your all? And I think it's things like that is going to be more helpful along the way. And definitely, really praising any successes they get is obviously really important. So yeah, I think support in a word is the main key, isn't it?
Absolutely. So who would you recommend this journey for?
Okay, so in terms of who I'd recommend the journey for, I would plainly say anybody with the desire to do that, which
Mhm.
sounds like a bit of a cop out answer, but I think that's very true. You can't be
100%.
like forced into it by anyone else. Like as I described a minute ago, the amount of time it takes to get really good, you have to have some internal desire there, because at some point, if I don't know, let's say you're being pressured by other people to go down that journey, at some point you're going to just get tired of it and just burn out or drop out. And that happens with a lot of athletes for sure. These young kids who are really good as kids, often they'll burn out because it's just so intense. But we could talk for hours about that for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I find it fascinating, Joe, the journey you went on over the last 2 years. And I know you're still playing competitive golf even now while you were coaching. And, just thinking about the journey you went on, I think it's so relatable for so many other junior golfers at different levels, whether they're playing high level US kids tournaments or they're playing in their local tournaments or they're playing, regional events at, let's say, high school level or even up to college level. I think the experience you went through was very realistic. And I think the journey you've had, I think you should share with your students along the way. You've shared it with me, and it's really helped me also understand the process and the journey that people go through. So I really appreciate you coming and sharing your story here on the Raising Golfers podcast.
Thanks, Travis.
It's always great catching up with Joe Hoblyn. I really enjoyed the advice he shared based on what he has learned over the past 2 years. If you are interested in this exciting journey, do yourself a favor. Rate your burning desire to practice and play golf competitively on a scale of 1 to 10. If the desire is high and you have a solid plan for when things don't go to plan, then hit this path as hard as you can and enjoy the whole process.